The Enigma of Jean Hilliard, the woman who came back to life after being frozen at -30 degrees Celsius. We have all heard of exceptional medical cases. Most can be explained. But what do we do with the ones that no one can make out? One such miracle occurred in 1980 when a girl named Jean Hilliard froze to -30 degrees Celsius and then inexplicably came back to life. Doctors simply have no explanation for how the girl survived, but the story is as true as it gets. On December 20th, 1980, 19-year-old Jean Hilliard's car skidded on an icy road and came to rest in a ditch. The girl was heading home after visiting a friend. She was afraid she would freeze to death. Jean was not injured in the incident, but did not stay in the car, fearing she would freeze to death. She thought about walking to the house of a friend who lived nearby. However, the temperature was -30 degrees Celsius and this friend's house was some distance away. Jean was walking against the wind, and her legs hurt terribly from the cold. After walking 3 kilometers through the snow, the young woman collapsed on the street in front of her friend's house. As she would later recall, Jean saw the road in front of the house and suddenly collapsed from exhaustion. She couldn't move anymore. When her strength left her and she fell, the clock read 1 o'clock. The girl lay there for 6 hours in a state of unconsciousness. During this time, her body slowly froze and Jean began to turn into an ice statue. Her body had already turned into a block of ice when her friend, Wally Nelson, came out of the house and saw her lying on the floor. She lay in the snow for 6 hours at -30 degrees. It was 7 in the morning. Wally thought she was dead because the girl's face was white as lime. Around 8 o'clock, Jean was taken to the local hospital, where the doctors had no idea what to do to save her. Her body did not respond to any form of medical care. As doctors later reported, Jean was breathing very slowly and her heart was only beating a few beats per minute. There was no space for the thermometer to be inserted to take his temperature. It was chunky ice cream and completely hard. He couldn't even move her wrists. The doctors couldn't move any part of her body and couldn't even penetrate her skin with the needle of the syringe. The girl's eyes, also frozen, did not react to the light at all. She was completely frozen and it seemed that she had no chance of survival. With nothing more to do, the doctors put warm, moist dressings on her body to raise his temperature. Around noon, however, Jean began to moan and ask for water. Miraculously, she had come back to life. During the night, she began to move her arms and hands slightly, and by 3 days she was able to move her legs as well. The strangest case in the history of medicine. Interestingly, no amputation was required. All the predictions of the doctors, who claimed that she would lose both her legs, turned out to be wrong. The doctors were amazed and said it was the first time they had witnessed such a comeback. In the end, Jean didn't lose a limb. She spent 6 days in intensive care before being moved to a regular hospital room. After 49 days, Jean was discharged from the hospital with no permanent condition. In fact, it was in perfect condition. This medical mystery is still unsolved. It is simply impossible to understand how a human can survive after being frozen to such a degree. What does science say? The process of freezing and the possibility of returning to life after exposure to extremely low temperatures is a complex and controversial topic in the scientific field. This idea is often associated with the concept of cryogenics, which involves preserving organisms at very low temperatures in the hope that in the future they might be brought back to life. Here are some key aspects to consider. Effects of extreme temperatures. Very low temperatures, such as -30 degrees Celsius, can have serious effects on living organisms. Freezing can lead to the formation of ice crystals inside cells, causing structural and functional damage. This is especially dangerous for delicate cells and tissues. Cryogenics and preservation. Cryogenics is a branch of science that studies the effects of very low temperatures on matter. There is a theory called vitrification, which suggests that organisms can be preserved in a state where no ice crystals form, thus minimizing cellular damage. However, the efficient implementation of this process on complex organisms such as humans is still a major challenge. Cryopreservation. There are cryopreservation techniques that involve freezing tissues or organs in liquid nitrogen at much lower temperatures, -196 degrees Celsius, than those mentioned. However, reviving these tissues or organs requires advanced technologies and is a considerable technical challenge. Ethical and legal issues. Apart from the scientific and technological challenges, there are also ethical and legal issues associated with cryogenics. There is currently no solid scientific evidence to support that a human body can be successfully frozen and revived. In conclusion, currently science and technology do not allow the successful freezing and reviving of a human organism under normal conditions. Cryogenics is still an area of research and the subject of intense debate in the scientific community. It is important to approach this idea with an appropriate degree of skepticism and to be aware of the current limitations of our technology and knowledge.